Horrifying shooting which left a 13-year-old boy with serious injuries.
Today, the boy who fired the shot was found guilty of causing grievous bodily harm at a court in Bury St Edmunds.
Although there's no proven link between the computer game and the shooting, there are questions tonight about whether youngsters can be influenced by violent scenes on their games consoles. Simon Newton reports.
It began as an average afternoon, two 13-year-old cousins and a friend playing computer games. It ended with a teenager in hospital, blasted in the face with a 12-bore shotgun, his brain peppered with shot, his face in need of plastic surgery. Today, a youth court in Bury St Edmunds convicted the teenager, who's now aged 15, of inflicting grievous bodily harm. He denied the charge. The court heard the boys had been playing Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, an 18 certificate mix of guns and gangsters, which has been blamed for several real-life shootings in America. The shooting took place here on the St Clement's estate in Haverhill in November 2004. The boy claimed he'd taken his father's shotgun from its locked cabinet in revenge after his cousin and friend had tried to scare and tease him. He admitted swapping a blank cartridge for a live one, aiming the gun to the side of his cousin's face and pulling the trigger. Prosecuting counsel Joanne Ely asked him, "In your opinion, you needed to do more to scare them." "I didn't want to kill him," the teenager replied. Miss Ely pressed him. "Yes, but you needed to do more." "Yes," he said. The teenager said he'd thought the shotgun's safety catch was on. He'd never wanted to shoot his cousin, he said. But in video evidence, the 14-year-old victim said his cousin had deliberately pointed the shotgun at him with the words, "This one can kill you." Grand Theft Auto is one of the biggest selling computer games of all time. Its mix of murder and mayhem has proved a big hit with gamers worldwide. But today the 15-year-old denied the game's violent content had led him to shoot his cousin. Shops which sell games like this one in Norwich say they do everything they can to make sure games aimed at adults don't end up in the hands of children.
Yes, we have to make sure that we check them. It's very, very hard when it's actually a parent coming in and buying them for their children. But I think really it's so much pressure on a parent, on a child that is at high school, that there is children out there that have got games, obviously older brothers and sisters that have got them as well. And there's so much pressure that the child under that age actually wants them. So it's really down to the parent's discretion.
Computer software experts say the level of reality in modern computer games is astonishing, but many remain sceptical about the link to real-life violence.
For every incident like this, there are thousands of players out there playing games like this who have no ill effects, no nightmares, no strange desires to go and kill anybody. They have thousands of perfectly normal people playing games like this with no problems.
The court was told the teenager had never been in trouble with the police before and had shown remorse for what he'd done. Today, magistrates warned him he could face a custodial sentence. Chairman of the bench, Hugh Davis, told the boy his actions had been reckless. "You pointed the gun at him and consciously moved it because you knew that if it went off, he would be hurt. We are in no doubt you knew the gun was loaded." Sentencing was adjourned until March the 1st. Simon Newton, Anglia News, Bury St Edmunds.
Police investigating the suspicious death of Camilla Gashka in Bedford say they urgently need information about two people seen near where her body was found.
Two pensioners saw a man and a woman walking at Priory Country Park on the day she disappeared.
Detectives believe the woman may have been Camilla. Our crime correspondent Matthew Hudson sent us this report.
It's now 10 days since Camilla Gashka's body was found at the other end of this lake here at Priory Country Park in Bedford. But on December the 13th, the day that she actually went missing, two men walking their dogs saw another couple coming in the opposite direction. Bedfordshire police are extremely keen to contact that couple. Detective Inspector Jed McCarthy is from the force. Mr. McCarthy, why is it so important that you find this couple?
Well, obviously, we've had a description of a young lady in the park, and that description does generally match the description of Camilla. And so we want to try and see whether or not, if it was Camilla, who she was with, and if it wasn't, we can then rule that lady out of the inquiry.
Now, have these two men been able to give you a description of these two people?
Yes, they have. The lady's described as a pretty white girl in her mid-20s, slim build, with dark blonde hair. And the gentleman's described as mid-20s of dark European origin.
I understand that the woman who was seen was not wearing an overcoat. Is that significant?
Well, it may well be, yes. The clothing as described is a top with some red on it and some trousers.
Detective Inspector, thank you very much indeed. Now, over the weekend, the police are going to be interviewing people who own boats at the nearby marina, hoping that one of them may be able to provide some useful information in this investigation.
Matthew Hudson reporting there. 2 former members of the Bay City Rollers have been cleared of serious drugs charges. Les McEwen and Patrick McGling, the band's leader, singer and guitarist, appeared before Basildon Crown Court accused of conspiracy to supply cocaine. The charge followed a drugs raid by police and customs officers on a hotel car park in Waltham Abbey. Mr McGlynn said they'd been in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Muslim leaders in Luton have joined the condemnation of Danish and French newspapers, which have printed cartoons featuring the Prophet Muhammad with a bomb in his turban. Worshippers at Friday prayers at Luton's Bury Park Mosque said they'd been deeply offended by the images, which have been reprinted in a number of European newspapers, prompting demonstrations all over the Muslim world.
Very, very deeply saddened, very, very deeply offended by these cartoons that were out in the Danish paper and other papers as well. Actually, the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he didn't come about with terrorism. He never ever initiated terrorism. And to have a bomb implanted on his turban, it's rather absurd, isn't it?
The leader of the Conservative Party, David Cameron, visited the site of the Hemel Hempstead fuel depot blast today.
He spoke to firefighters and raised the issue again of why Buncefield was built so close to homes. Claire McGlasson reports.
It's 8 weeks since the disaster here at Buncefield. Today's visit by the leader of the Conservative Party has brought us to the heart of the devastation. This is closer than our cameras have ever been before. This fire was the biggest in peacetime Europe. Today it still looks like a war zone here, a mass of singed wood and twisted metal.
Yeah, you can see this is the northeast edge.
It's become a magnet for so-called disaster tourists. Today David Cameron came to see for himself. The physical force of the explosion clear wherever he looked, but none scheduled one-to-one ensured he was in no doubt of the emotional cost too.
I'm living in a 2-bedroom council flat with my 76-year-old mother, with no furniture.
And when have you been told you have got a chance of...
We don't know.
Right.
We don't know.
A plea for help from one of the 8 families still unable to return to their homes. 1,000 jobs affected too. Workers unable to collect their personal belongings, still in their desks, still in offices, blasted apart by the explosion. It may have been a national disaster, but the local authority is covering much of the cost. Council tax will have to rise by 5.4% across the county next year to pay for the emergency response. A burden Mr Cameron thinks should be covered by a national emergency fund, headed by a specific emergencies minister.
These houses got hit here, right across into this estates here.
I see you. Well, were you there as well?
From the scene of the fire to the firefighters who tackled it, Mr Cameron visited Hemel Hempstead Fire Station to meet the crews.
Well, a very brave job you did, I must say.
You have to be there to actually feel the force of it and actually see and hear the sounds that are going on, and it is quite hard to put it across, but obviously explain it as best you can.
Well, he was asking what it was like when we first turned up, what our first impressions were, what we thought, what we did, and obviously it was an incident on a massive scale, so it wasn't anything that we were normally used to dealing with. But I think he was quite impressed with the way we handled things.
Impressed, yes, but Mr Cameron said questions should be asked about how it happened in the first place.
We need to have a good distribution mechanism for oil, and there will have to be a replacement to the depot that was here. But I think that we need the public inquiry to take place properly first to make sure where is it that we should site these depots. Is it right that they're right next door to a large industrial estate where thousands of people work? Is it right that they are so close to residential properties where people live? We've got to remember that the miracle of Buncefield was that nobody was killed.
His convoy also visited Woodhall Farm Community Centre to meet residents, councillors and teachers.
You know, they thought it was an earthquake, they thought it was a bomb, and it was very frightening.
The visit coincided with a high-profile row about air fuel rationing at Heathrow Airport. American and United Airlines complaining that British companies are first in the queue when it comes to the allocation of limited fuel. Plenty of complaints at Buncefield too. The priorities here are a hardship fund to help those most in need, regenerating business in the future and making sure scenes like this are consigned to the past. The week of the fire here at Buncefield may prove key in David Cameron's political career. It was, after all, the same week he was elected leader of the Conservative Party. So a busy day of photo opportunities here today. Early days for him as leader, early days too for the rebuilding of Buncefield. Looking here today gives you an idea of the scale of what's still to be done. All this will have to be cleared, then these buildings demolished before rebuilding can even begin. Claire McGlasson, Anglia News, Hemel Hempstead.
It was incredible, wasn't it? Quite awful. Still to come here on Anglia tonight, demolition has started on the Kingswood estate in Corby.
It was once a model estate, but after years of problems and antisocial behaviour, the plan has failed.
The site's now been earmarked for modern family housing, but there are mixed opinions, as Carl Heidel reports.
Corby is having a facelift. Houses like this on the Kingswood estate are being pulled down, much to the joy of residents.
They've been a problem for many, many years. There's a lot of bedsits, one-bedroom flats that nobody wants. They've been left to go derelict. We've had problems with vandalism, fires, and they've just been a general blot on the landscape.
For years, Barbara and many other people living here have campaigned for better housing. Now it seems their dreams have been answered. Let me give you a quick idea about how big this demolition project is. Everything that you can see behind me is going to be knocked down. 150 homes over the next 8 months are going to be demolished. And over there you can see the first phase has already been completed. In its heyday, this estate won awards for its design. Built to a Radburn plan, it meant that all the traffic was kept to the back of the properties, and in the front they had nice little gardens. But unfortunately, a design fault meant that there was a lot of rat runs too. And it's these rat runs that have helped this estate to breed antisocial behaviour. Places for hooligans to hide, commit crime and flee with little fear of being caught, because there are so many escape routes. 3 years ago we filmed at night on the Kingswood estate, and this is the kind of thing we saw. Teenagers starting fires, the Kingswood estate an arson hotspot. Things have improved, but the council thinks getting rid of this type of housing to make way for private homes will make things even better.
It's very much taking ideas from local people, and we'll be looking to build it exactly as they would want it to be. Much more conventional family-style housing, private enclosed small front gardens, garages in safe single garage units in back gardens and so on. So getting away from these big anonymous garage blocks and this anonymous public space.
In all, 400 homes on 3 estates in Corby face demolition. All the council tenants are being rehomed, sales agreed with private owners. But some people on nearby Lodge Park estate don't want to have their homes knocked down. They'd prefer them to be renovated, but that is too expensive for the council.
All the areas could be looked after. They could even make their own little gardens, that we were talking about it. Make it a nice place to live. But unfortunately, it's not cost effective.
Of course, living on the Kingswood estate wasn't always as hard.
I moved here in 1980 and it was very nice. People were proud to be here. It's gradually gone down and rapidly gone down over the last 5 or 6 years, I think.
The council hopes by next year, with new housing, that this estate will once again find its prime and that it will be a model for similar regeneration across the rest of the town. Carl Heidel, Anglia News, Corby.
In Closer to Home today, we have the 3 essentials of life: clean water, fresh beer and just a little exercise.
And for the little exercise, let's head...
Almost half of 999 calls they receive aren't necessary and in many cases trivial.
They've even had calls from people saying they've lost their remote control or they want a Chinese takeaway, can you believe? Now they're appealing for everyone to think before they dial 999. Emma Whiteley reports.
Good afternoon, Northamptonshire Police. They receive about 35,000 calls in this control room every month, and only about a third of them are emergencies. But too often police time is wasted by 999 calls that simply aren't necessary. And it's not just hoax callers. Lots of people phoning in believe they have a genuine reason to call 999.
We have had some weird ones, like, is it still possible to eat an out-of-date yoghurt? I have a wasp nest in my eaves. I want a taxi. Can you get me a Chinese meal? Now, some of those obviously are mischievous, but some of them are just misguided. And what we're saying is, please think about the criteria for calling the police on an emergency line.
They've even launched a website dedicated to answering people's questions and are encouraging callers to get in touch via the switchboard, not 999. Police say every time a non-emergency call comes in on 999, it could cost someone's life. Emma Whiteley, Anglia News.
It is unbelievable, isn't it?
Absolutely.
There we go. Time for a look at sport now.
People of Northampton are a cultured lot.
And even those who aren't will be after this weekend.
Because the world's largest interactive art installation has just been set up in the town centre. And joining us from our own video art installation in the studio is Mike Cartwright. Hello, Mike.
Hiya, how you doing? Well, when it comes to public art, this one here is a record breaker. It's the world's largest video clip installation. Not a very catchy title, but great fun to look at. See for yourself. It's covering an area around 1,500 square metres, and dotted amongst it are what are called interactive portraits being beamed down from projectors above. Now, here's one here. Now, when you cover her with your shadow, hopefully she should do something very soon. And, well, she's thinking about it. She was waving at us earlier, but obviously not now. But yeah, she is. A lot of people here, as you can see. Well, it's the brainchild of artist Raphael Lozano Hemmer. Raphael, what is the thinking behind all this?
I wanted to make a public art piece that would include people. It's 1,000 portraits of people from the region, and I wanted for them to sort of take over public space. In a way, it's kind of like a shadow play. You've seen how the portraits are inside of your shadow. So it's kind of a mixture of phantasmagoria and sort of play acting and sort of theatrical presentation.
Raphael, thanks very much. Right, well, 200 of the people taking part in this are from Northampton. Now, one of them is Daniel Day. He's over here. Daniel, have you found yourself yet?
Well, I've been looking for absolutely hours, but I still can't find it, so yeah.
Right, okay, and what were you doing?
Well, I was just, the pose I was playing, well, it was kind of a strange pose, but if I did it on TV, I'd embarrass myself. So.
All right. Well, I won't ask you to do that. Daniel, thank you very much. Well, if you like your art big and interactive, well, then this is the place for you, and it's running for 10 nights. Back to you.
Brilliant, thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. I think he had some fans in the background
yes,
there, didn't he?
Good to see the good people of Northampton out there tonight.
Well, it's time to catch up with Wendy again.